Welcome along, everybody. We are back for bronze action. We are here in Qatar then for the penultimate round of the season as well then. And wow, Good evening and good luck to everyone from Ginger, sorry, in the comment section already. Then good stuff indeed. Hopefully we've got some audio. Then good stuff. We've got some audio as well. Brilliant. We're cracking on then. We've got the penultimate round of the season. A championship can be decided here tonight. Then Dan leads the way then with 237 points. Then to Luke's 216, I think it is, or 17. I might have got them the wrong way around with it. But to be fair, I am a bit under the weather. Let's just say that then. So we'll have to wait and see then as we go through there. Rain in the race then, says Ginger Age, and my goodness me, I'm not sure if that's a serious comment or not, to be fair, but oh dear, I think we've actually got rain on the forecast then for Bahrain, for Qatar tonight then, so that's going to be interesting, let's just say the least there, but okay, we'll get onto that then. In the championship then, 236 points for Dan then, leading the way then in the championship, and of course there's only one race to go then after this one, and the gap then is currently 19 points, to Luke then, who's on 217 then, so it's going to be close indeed, and if Dan then can outscore Luke by over 7 points, then, well, 8 points or more, I should say, then it could go the way of the Alpine machine then tonight then as well. We'll have to wait and see how it's going to fare then. Of course, Luke then is looking to try and keep that title fight alive going into the final round of the season then in Abu Dhabi in a week's time then, and this will be, or in a week's time, it will be the final race of ALR then on F1 24 as well then, as we've got Jamie then starting off on lap then heading into the first couple of corners there. Good stuff indeed. So a wet race then here in Qatar then apparently is going to be the way it's going to unfold. That's going to be interesting to say the least then, so we'll have to wait and see how it's going to show, but there we are then. Gina then in P3, 173 points for him then. He is 20, well no, yes he is 20, no he's 18 points ahead of Dynamo Dan in P4, so that could go down to the wire as well for the final podium place then in the Drivers' Championship here tonight as well then, so it's going to be very dicey indeed then. In the Constructors then, kicks out, we've already wrapped it up then for Luke and Smithy then. They've already taken the crown then in Brazil last week then. Alpine in P2, 245 points then for them, and Haas then 242 in P3. It's getting quite close between those two, and of course in P4, I should say, McLaren are only a few points away with 239 as well then, so there's still all to play for in the Constructors then for those P2 and P3 positions, so that's good stuff indeed then. We've got everything ready to get going then. Nobody produces better championship battles than Luke then apparently, so that's going to be good stuff indeed then, as we get ourselves ready to get ourselves qualifying now. As Jamie then will be the first to finish off a lap, I think, here then. No, we've got Liam, finishing off a lap first then, but Jamie then does a 22.4, then just a tenth of a second faster. Then Ginner's done a 21.7 though on the McLaren. Fantastic stuff indeed then. Rain in the race then, says Ginger Rage, and that is going to be very problematic indeed as well, if that's going to be the case. But there we are then, so we've got some rain forecast for this potential championship fight as well then. That's going to be fantastic. Well, maybe not for the drivers, it depends on on their point of view, but there we are then, Mr. Elite coming through the final couple of corners and just keeping it within track limits then in the penultimate turn. And now here comes the Haas then to finish off his first flying lap of the qualifying session, and 14 minutes to go then in this session as well. As we head over the line then, Mr. Elite then onto the front row of the grid then with 22.1, puts himself ahead of Jamie for the time being. We have got a Mercedes then of Goddard's, and Goddard's coming across the line, P5, 23.7 for him. Yellow flags in sector 2, and I think that's just for drivers getting themselves out of the way then, or on their in laps I should say, so that's all good in the hood. Into turn 1 goes Styles then, starting off another lap as well then for the Haas pair, or Haas driver I should say then. Whereas Astrojohn then, he's had a problem somewhere in the first couple of corners in sector 1 then. He has invalidated his time, so unfortunately we'll have to go back round and come back in again. Styles though is on to turn 4, and looking good indeed. The yellow flags then fluttering, I think, for that Williams then trying to get himself back in the pit lane then. So there we are then, as we go through then into sector 2 now for Styles, and purple in sector 1. Then that's looking promising stuff indeed. Styles has been on form then this season, much better than his previous seasons as well then, and looking good indeed then going through sector 2 then. The ERS light flashing away there, but he has switched it back into hot lap now, so maybe harvesting then through the tight and twisty part of sector 2 as well as we go through in towards sector 3 momentarily now for Styles. Then let's see where he's going to put that Hash then in his first attempt in qualifying. Purple again in sector 2, looking good good indeed for Styles then as we go through sector 3, just keeping it, oh dear, look like I went over the track limit there, but nonetheless the game has not penalised him for that one, so that's alright. As we go through the penultimate corner now then for Styles, then can he get himself lined up then for the final turn then, and a run to the checkered line as we go through then into the final turn then. He's got a nice little toe then from the Mercedes, I think, starting a lap there. As we go over the line then, Styles P5 22.7 for Styles then, so I'm not quite sure why that's purple. He's gone purple in sector 3 as well somehow, but here's a second off the pace then of Ginner then as it stands. As we've got Goddard's then starting off another lap then heading into the first few corners. Where is San? San is heading through the same part of the lap as well then, so we'll come back to San as well then. We've got Rocket Lead rocketing up to P2 then onto the front row, 22.1 for him then. He is only 4 thousandths away then from, or ahead of Mr. Elite for the time being, but he's onto the first row of the grid then in P2 then. Good stuff indeed. Real Ashton is retired in the pit lane. Unfortunately, he is done and dusted in qualifying here, so that's not going to be any more improvement then from Real Ashton, unfortunately, then on his penultimate qualifying appearance then in bronze, of course, with this season as well. That is Astrodron, I think, is out on the intermediate compound tyres, so we don't have to worry about him because he's not going to be setting a competitive lap time. He might need those intermediate compound tyres for the race as it stands, because apparently we're going to have some rain on the forecast then for bronze tonight then, so that's going to be an interesting race indeed. If that's the case, that is, of course, we're not sure, but there we go then as we head into the final corner now for San. Let's see what San can do then in the Ferrari then. Can he put himself up the order then? We'll find out on his first attempt. Here he comes across the line then for San then. What's it going to be? It's P6 and 22.6 for him then, ahead of Styles, ahead of Goddard's, who and ahead of Real Ashton, of course, then, who set a time so far then. Real Ashton has retired from the qualifying. He's not going to take part anymore then in this session. Where are we then? Astrodron is coming into the pit lane there, I think, so that's him done dusted on his lovely intermediate run. Then Ginger Age unfortunately has invalidated his time, so he's going again then, I think, is the Racing Bull driver then, heading down towards the start finish line, and there he goes then, away he goes then down towards the first turn as well then. Where is Ginner then? Ginner just about to start a flying lap, I should say. Goodness me, there's too many F's in there, but Ginner then underway once again then. Of course, Ginner then currently on pole position by over 3.5 tenths, I think that is, if I can do the maths quickly, but I can't, because there we go. So there we are then. Rain set up on, says Real Ashton then, and he is going to be looking good in the rain then, potentially. Then we'll have to wait and see then, as Ginner has invalidated his time going through the first couple of corners. Rosa Skies jumped up to P5, then he's been displaced by his teammate. Then Dan, of course, could win the championship tonight then as well. Then Dan in P2 now, 21.8 for Dan, and wow, that's looking pretty good indeed. Then he's less than half a tenth away then from the pole position here. Yellow flags fluttering then for that Haas then, who's having a bit of a trouble trying to get himself back into the circuit, into the pit lane, as you say then. But Dan then onto the front row of the grid. Then Dan needs to outscore Luke by 8 points or more then to confirm the championship then for the Alpine driver then. He can do that tonight, of course. Then there is one more round remaining then, so if the gap is over 26 points then for Dan, he will of course secure the title. Might have to go reserve and if Preston go into League One, then goodness me. Well, there we are then. But there we are then. So far, so good then for Real Ashton then, and for Dan as well. Then Dan looking strong. Then Rocket League down to P3. Mr. Elite then back out on circuit as well, going through into Sector 1. We'll come back to him then. Rosa has done a great job on his debut reserve appearance, I think it is, for Rosa. He is currently P5 in the Alpine. Then the second Alpine, of course, Vintage, unfortunately not here tonight then, so Rosa has stepped in then, and he is looking pretty good indeed then. We've got Luke out on circuit, of course, championship contender as well, then looking to try and keep the title fight alive then into the final round of the season next week. But Luke then, of course, I'm not sure if it's Luke driving or somebody else, to be fair, but we'll have to wait and see then. But I think Luke is in the car then this time. We've got Serious Mushroom on the medium compound tyres, then medium compounds then for the Aston Martin heading into the final turn. They're going a bit wide then on the entry then, but now on the exit, powering away then down towards the start finish line. Then he's going to try and knock the DRS side off blocks. Then 14th then for Serious Mushroom, then 23.4 then for the Aston Martin. Then great stuff indeed, and very good stuff indeed as well then, of course. 8 minutes left of qualifying then, and of course, like I said, there might be some slower times out there because we are expecting rain in the race. I'm not quite sure how much we're expecting or how we're expecting it, but nonetheless we are expecting it, so that's what we've been told anyway, as we go through into the final corner. Then this time for Jake the Slayer. Then let's see what Slayer can do then up to the line. Then he's getting a nice toe from that Haas. Then he's starting off a lap now. And Slayer then goes P13, then 22.8 then for the Racing Bull Driver. Good stuff indeed. Ginger Age has crossed the line. Then he's starting off another lap then for Ginger Age. Then 23.4 as its best so far. Then here comes Luke. Luke then heading into sector 2. I didn't see what his Delta was saying in the first sector. Then can Luke try and rival Dan Dan? That he only needs to worry about Dan Dan then, of course, at this stage. Gina then is, I think, mathematically out of the title fight then in terms of how he can, if he can maximise the points. Then that is, even if you've got 26 points times 2, then I think I'm not sure he'd be able to get himself back in the title fight then, unfortunately, with Gina. But he's doing a good job then so far. Then currently on pole position. And looking pretty strong indeed as well. Then here comes Luke, then purple in sector 2. Then he's got a bit of traffic ahead of him, and hopefully they can get themselves out of the way of the championship contender then, who is flying through into the final corner. Then goodness me, there's a Ferrari then getting in the way. Then that is ASR San then, who's blocking the way then, I think, from Luke then on the entry to the final corner. And Luke then might be a bit unhappy with that then. 22.0 then for Luke then, as he gets himself into the top 3. And San then definitely starting a lap now as well. But San got in the way then of the championship contender as well. Then going through into the final corner there. That could be problematic indeed. I don't think he lost too much time there, because he did manage to get himself around the Ferrari quite quickly. But yes, bit of an odd one that, as Styles then back in the pit lane, and P12 currently for Styles as well. Then Jake the Slayer has invalidated his time. Ginger Rage then has invalidated his time as well, going back into the pit lane for the Racing Bull Driver as well here. And there we are then. Astrojon is on to a set of soft compound tyres this time, and has set a time of a 23.3, then puts himself P16 for the time being. Then good stuff. Need Jake the Slayer back in the pits as well. Then San is on a lap then, but San is, like I said, not in the good books then of Luke, then the championship contender as well. Then he seemed to be getting in the way a bit there into the final lap then for Luke, that is. But there we are then. Dunamadan then P8 for the time being as well. Then he's on that as well and going through into sector 1. Rocket Lee's had an issue somewhere, because he's having a bit of a problem then getting himself back in the pit lane. Luke then is, of course, is coming back to the pits as well. I think here he's run out of fuel though, has Luke then, so he's going to be cruising around then very slowly. And there we go then. Hope he's got time to get himself back in and back out again then for a final attempt in qualifying here with 5 minutes left of the session. Gino is back out on circuit then, going through into sector 3 now. There's a very slow Haas there as well then, as Gino's gone wide then, but it's not invalidated his time so far, which is good stuff. And here comes McLaren and Gina. They're going through the final couple of corners. And again, that Haas is getting in the way a bit there from Gina. And wow, where is he gone? He's just darted off the circuit then. That's Mr. Elite then. There's a few drivers out there seem to be having a bit of a problem then looking in their wing mirrors. Let's just say that then at the moment. Then there's San then is back in the pit lane. So unfortunately, San's time then was not good enough then, and he unfortunately did block Luke as well then. So a few people having a few issues, it looks like, going through the final turn then and looking backwards rather than looking forwards. Here comes Dynamite Dan then looking to go forwards as well here. P7 for Dynamite Dan, 22.76, then puts himself ahead of Rosa Sky, who is also on a lap there going through the sector 3. And he is almost 5 tenths up on his previous time. Then that would put him in the range with Dan Dan, his teammate, as it stands as well. Oh dear, I'm trying to switch the camera angle. There we go. Here he comes then into the final corner then for Rosa Sky on his second attempt here in qualifying. Can he get himself on the front row of the grid? Then it's going to be close indeed between himself and his teammate here as we go up to the line then for Rosa. Then it's going to be P2, then a 21.794, and that is only a few milliseconds behind Gina for that pole position as well here. Good stuff indeed. Very good stuff indeed as well. Dan then in P3 then, or down to P3 I should say then, after being displaced by his teammate then. Jamie then starting off a lap then heading down the main straight towards the first turn. Where is Dukanko then? Dukanko coming through into sector 3 now. He is 5 tenths up on his previous time. That would put him into the range then of the top 8 then potentially. Let's see what we can do then through sector 3 then. Keeping it all together then is paramount, of course, especially through here. Lots of penalties can be awarded in the Grand Prix as well. I'm sure we will see that, because we've seen that quite a few times in the previous Qatar iterations then for ALR and any other league racing we've done as well. As here comes Dukanko then up to the line. What's it going to be for Dukanko? It's P9 at 22.4, and he improved by 4 tenths of a second then. Good stuff indeed then from the Ferrari driver then. Fantastic. Styles back out on a lap as well, then going through sector 1 then into sector 2 momentarily then. Serious Mushroom starting lap on the soft compound tyres now. and his teammate Winnie is going through into the final corner then on his first qualifying lap as well here. Then let's see what Winnie can do. Winnie can, like Ginger Rage alluded to as well, then he can be hit or miss then in qualifying, because sometimes he can practice, sometimes he can't practice. 22.8 then puts himself P14 for the time being. Then good stuff indeed. Ginger Rage starting off on another lap as well then for the Racing Bull driver. Let's see what we can do then heading into turn 1. Then that very bright pink helmet then lighting up the sky here in Losail. Then fantastic stuff indeed. And so far so good then. As we head into, we've got a very slow, what's that? It's a very slow Smithy that is on an outlap there. Maybe getting out of the way of that Ferrari, but I believe that Ferrari is Takanko, who's coming back into the pit lane anyway. So there we go then. Out of the pits comes Luke, then the championship contender. Then he can try and rival Dan then for the title tonight. Then he needs to be able to keep himself within 8 points then of Dan in terms of Dan outscoring him by 8 points. If that is the case, then of course Dan will win the championship here tonight. Then we've got there's a Haas there going out, coming. What is going on there with that Haas? Styles trying to drive into Luke then, but yeah, there we go. He's got himself sorted. He's down into P12 and down to P13, I should say, because Serious Mushroom jumps up into P11 with a 22.543. Then good stuff indeed, just outside the top 10 for the time being by only 0.02 of a second. To be fair, it's not far away then for Mushroom. So there we go. As we head into the dying embers then of qualifying, of course, like I said, a very wet start to the race it sounds like, or at least a wet part of the race coming up then in the next few moments then, so we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen here in Qatar then. Winnie's had a bit of a problem getting himself into the pit lane correctly, but there we go, he's back in the pit lane now. Unfortunately, I don't think he's got time to go back round again then, has Winnie then. Ginger Rage has stayed P19, 23.2 has improved then into that echelon as well then. Rocket Lee then rockets up to P1 I should say, 21.743, and that is 300ths of a second I should say. Winnie's retired in the pit lane as well then. 300ths of a second ahead of Jinder then currently. Then Rocket Lee looking good indeed, currently on pole position then for the Williams driver. Then fantastic stuff, as we've got quite a few outlaps then behind him though for the likes of Jinder, Rosa Sky, Dan, Luke, Mr. Elite. Then they're all looking to challenge as well. Then Jamie's on a lap as well, then heading through into sector 2 momentarily as well. Then ASR San then unfortunately doesn't look like he's going to be able to improve on P8. Then he's going a bit slowly through sector 1. Then Dukanko's retired in the pit lane, he's P10. Liam is coming through the final couple of corners. Where is Astrojon then? Astrojon starting off a lap momentarily. No, it's Jinder starting off a lap momentarily as well. Then where is the Aston Martin then of Serious Mushroom coming back in the pit lane? He is done and dusted in qualifying for Mushroom, unfortunately. Where is Smithy then? Smithy to cross the line next is going to go up to P5 then. Fantastic, he displaces his teammate Luke down to P6 though, and 21.995 for Smithy then puts himself on the third row of the grid then alongside his teammate currently, but there's still time to be found for Luke as well then, as there we go then. A few more drivers then starting off their laps. Then Dynamo Dan next to start his lap off as well. Then we've got Astrojon, I think, right behind him, then down the main straight, which is quite odd indeed. It was very close indeed as well then. But there we are then. We've got Ginger Rage, we've got a spinner then for Goddard's. Then Goddard's had an issue then at the hairpin. It looks like then he's trying to get himself out of the way then and off the track then. And we go through then for the Ferrari. I think he's not on a lap either, to be fair. But there is a lap then coming from Luke. I think this Luke then coming through then into sector 3 now momentarily then as well. There he is then. Can he try and challenge Dan then for that top spot then? Of course, he's got the best you can do in qualifying then, of course, then to try and get yourself in the best position for the start of the Grand Prix. But here comes Luke then. Luke coming around the final corner then to finish the qualifying for Luke. Then Rosa Skies then stays P3 I should say. He does not improve on his final run. Here comes Luke then. Can he improve? Where is he going to go then in Luke? Then P5 then a 21.961 then puts himself back ahead of his teammate, but not in terms of challenging the Alpines. And this is where it could get problematic, because Dan is on an improving lap. Then here comes Dan then round the final couple of corners then for the Alpine machine, and let's see what it's going to be. Jinner's gone fastest of 21.494, and that is looking pretty formidable then from Jinner. That is almost 2.5 faster than Rocket Lee. Here comes Dan then to challenge, and can he challenge as well? Then into P2 then goes Dan then, 21.604, puts himself on the front row of the grid then, and that is fantastic, because he needs to try and outscore Luke by 8 points or more then in this session to win the championship tonight then as well. Then Dan is looking pretty good indeed then out there. Of course, the conditions might have something to say about that as well then later on in the Grand Prix. Jake the Slayer then crosses the line. P15 just improves then ahead of Styles and Winnie then as well, then up into that P15 then. But Dan then on the front row of the grid then is looking good indeed. Then in terms of championship order, then he's 18 points then if it was to finish as it is now, and Luke would score 8 points, so that gap would be an extension of 10 then, which means that Dan would win the title then if it was to stay this way. Of course, we've got 29 laps of action to sort that out first, but we'll have to wait and see how it's going to unfold here in in the race itself, I should say. Then after the qualifying session has now ended, then Jenna then pole position, then fantastic pace, sorry, from Jenna, then 10th of a second ahead of Dan in P2, Rocket Lee P3, splitting the Alpine pair, then Rosa in P4, then Dynamo Dan P5, Luke P6, Smith in P7, then Mr. Elite P8, then Jamie in P9, San in P10, Astrodron P11, DeCanco P12, Liam in P13, Sirius Splash in P14, Jake the Slayer P15, Styles P16, Winnie P17, Goddard's P18, Ginger Rage in P19. Unfortunately for Real Ashton, he is P20, but he did set a time very early on in the session. Wow, okay then, title is on then for Dan potentially then. We'll have to wait and see then what the weather conditions are going to say in this in this screen as well then. We'll have a quick word from our lovely sponsors then. Oh dear, it is pouring with rain here in Qatar then. We'll have a quick word from our sponsors before we get ourselves into the race itself. And the rain is definitely falling here in Qatar. Then, blimey, it is full wet conditions for Bahrain, for Qatar. Goodness me. I don't think we were expecting this. I don't think anybody was expecting this, to be fair. It is full wet conditions, and it's not been set up like this. It's been on it's dynamic weather. I can guarantee it. I know we went through the lobby settings beforehand, but it is pouring with rain in Qatar. And I don't think we've ever seen anything like this, to be fair. We've definitely had sort of intermediate conditions in Abu Dhabi a few seasons ago. I think that was in Silver as well back in the day. I think it was season 2 of Silver it was Abu Dhabi then. That was a bit of intermediate conditions then, because it was a bit of a crossover period. But this is full wet conditions in Qatar, and wow, I don't think anybody's ever seen this before, to be fair. This is well, it's going to be very interesting indeed then for the race itself, but fingers crossed that everyone can keep it together then as we go through. Then everyone on wet compound tyres then to start off the Grand Prix, and my goodness me, that is going to be as wet as well then. So I'm predicting that it's going to be wet for the whole race potentially here. Wow. Fantastic. Okay, well that's going to be interesting stuff indeed then, isn't it? As we got full wet conditions here in Qatar, then we weren't expecting this. It's not a lobby that we've got this set up for in terms of getting it all signed up for the wet conditions, that sort of thing. It is this is completely unpredicted, and wow, what's it going to say then in terms of the drivers' championship as well? Then Luke then needs to keep himself within 8 points then of Dan then to try and keep the title fight alive. Then heading into the final race of the season in Abu Dhabi then. The sun is out in Qatar then, says Kiki then. Oh, maybe we've got, I'm not sure, maybe it's just a glitch then for me. So there we go then, as Gino then lines us up on the grid then for the start of the Qatar Grand Prix. And like I said, it's going to be, well, going to be an interesting one to say the least then, especially with the, well, it's going to be an interesting one to say the least. Let's just say that then in this sense, because it's going to be, well, interesting. Chaos, to be fair, in my opinion. This could be very, very difficult indeed. And as we go through then into the grid slots then for the top of the order then, just waiting for everyone to get themselves parked up then. I'm joking, says Kiki as well. Then sun is out then, so it's not coming out then here tonight then. Well, it's going to be quite a dark race anyway, to be fair. It's a night race then, and it's pouring with rain here in Qatar then. That is going to be a first, let's just say that as well then. Here we go then, 5 red lights coming on then for the penultimate race of the Bronze Season 9 then. The 5 red lights are on, the 5 red lights are out, and away we go then, heading in towards turn 1. Jin has got a good start then on the wet compound. Rocket Lee's past Dan with a great start as well then in the Williams, and heading in towards as Dan's dropping down the order. Luke's flown through. Luke has flown through into P2 here. What a move then from Luke then on the wet compound tyres then. He is stormed off in the distance almost. No, he's not going himself past Rocket Lee. Rocket Lee's held on to P2. There's yellow flags in the background then, all sorts of issues then, as we've got Dan who's lost out. Dan has dropped down to 13th then. Dan is in peril then for the championship leader then. Goodness me, he's down to P10 then, well, up to P10 I should say. regaining a few spots there, but these wet conditions are treacherous indeed, let's just say the least, as we head into the first couple of corners. Liam's dropped down to P20, unfortunately for Liam then, but he's now got himself back underway. Then he's struggling in these wet conditions though. Jamie's dropped down 7 places, Ginger Age up into P15 here. My goodness me, then those who have factored in the wet weather then are flying. Then Luke has got himself up into P3, Dan's dropped down to P10. Then this is going to be problematic for Dan in the championship fight then. My goodness me, then there's so much spray you can't even see the cars then as well. Then we go through the desert into sector 2, momentarily into sector 3, and goodness me, this is chaos, but it's great chaos at the moment. Mr. Elite has passed Smithy then for P6, then Mr. Elite has gained 2 places off the start as well. Then Smithy down to P7, then Styles is up 8 places, fantastic from Styles. Then Winnie's up 6 places as well. Then there's battling in the background. Then it's Winnie and Dan. Winnie and Dan, of course. Dan's trying to keep his championship fight alive as well here, and well, not championship fight. Then he's trying to extend his championship fight and then potentially win the championship here tonight as well. But Dan is struggling in these wet conditions, heading into the final turn alongside Winnie into P10 now. And my goodness me, then all action here in Qatar on the opening lap. Then it is chaos then in these wet conditions. Here comes Luke then trying to put the pressure on the Williams of Rocket Lee into first turn, then not quite then as we head into the braking zone then of the first corner as well. Then making sure you get it right then is very questionable. Very questionable is very paramount, but it's very questionable indeed in these horrible conditions. I don't think any of these practiced for wet conditions here in Qatar ever, to be honest. Then as Dan is struggling so much and he's trying to keep Winnie behind him, but when he snuck through then I think then, oh no, has he gone then? He's off the circuit there as well. They're heading through turn 3 then, and Dan has got himself back past Winnie. I think they're into turn 4 then. Has he held on to it? No, Winnie's going to go for the cut back now, and he's got himself back through then. Fantastic from Winnie. What a move there from the Aston Martin driver as well then, as we head into the hairpin now of sector 2 there as well. Then goodness me, so yeah, the problem then for Dan is he's struggling. Then he's actually with all of the struggles that he's having, then he's holding up quite a bit of a queue now, and the top 9 have started to scamper away. They're now 2.5 seconds ahead of Winnie, and as we go through then into lap 2, then my god, then Rocket Lee is 2 seconds behind Jinner, who's stormed off in the distance here. Jinner is doing a great job there as well. Astrodron has passed Jake the Slayer then for P14. Unfortunately, Astrodron's dropped down 3 places, but looking to regain those in the next couple of laps or so. Then all these conditions start to abate then later on in the session or not, then this is going to be fantastic racing. If it's going to be wet conditions all the way through, Ginger and Goddard's then battling as well, going through. Goodness me, there's more contact there as well. Then my god, then going through into sector 2. Then Sirius Rushman's got himself past Goddard's as well, and Goddard's went off the circuit. Then I think going side by side in these conditions is not going to be the call. Then as we go through, then Rocket League, Real Ashton's gone wide there as well. Then Liam is doing a great job. He's caught up when by 5 seconds in the first lap or 2 after the escapades in the first couple of corners then on lap 1. Fantastic stuff indeed. Then fastest lap then for Junior, I think it was. Then Luke then is just settling into P3 now for the time being. Then Dan is still stuck behind Winnie. Then as we go through, there's almost contact then from Decanco then heading into the first couple of corners, and I think Decanco then is looking to put the pressure on, but Dan struggling in these wet conditions around Qatar. And look at that, the rain is sideways through here. It's not even a sandstorm, it's just a weather storm. And wow, like I said, it's the first time we've ever seen something like this, I think, in Qatar. And my goodness me, it's going to be it's going to be a long race as well, especially in these conditions, because like I said, just keeping the car on the island is going to be the difficult thing, especially if it keeps raining like this. It's going to start flooding in parts of the track, I think. But there we go. The Hungry Styles then is lost out then to Smithy then by 1.6 seconds, and Winnie is bringing that gap in then to the top 9. We've got Luke going for P2. Then Luke is up into P2, passing Rocket Lee into sector 2. Then he's got the move done for P2. Then Luke is storming off now, 4 seconds. The gap though to Jinner out in front. Then Jinner is doing a great job out here into sector 3. Then he is flying along on those wet compound tyres. Then maybe he has practiced for the wet compound, then we never know. But Luke then is now up to V2 then. As it stands, Luke then is keeping the championship fight alive then between himself and Dan then in this order. Then Dan will score. Not quite sure what will score, to be fair. Let's go Luke then, says Finn as well. Then Finn is supporting Luke. Then Luke is currently keeping the championship fight alive. Then Astra John's had an issue somewhere. He's off the circuit then. He's down to P19. And oh my goodness me, he's almost into the back end of Real Ashton as well, and going through the final couple of corners there. But Astra John's off the circuit there, unfortunately. He's got himself back in the queue. Oh, back in the train, I should should say. Then goodness me, flying around that final corner then is losing that back end is very easy to do, it looks like there. Mr. Reed's got himself past Dynamo down then for P5. Mr. Reed up 3 places then, storming along on these wet compound tyres, and good stuff indeed. Then Dan is lost out to Winnie then when he's reeling in Styles, and Styles has been passed by Sam as well at some point on lap 3 as well here. Then Rocket Lee's dropped down to P2 then, has he? P4 I should say. Then yes, he has been passed by Rosa. Then Rosa's storming through into the podium places now as it stands, and trying to chase down Luke then as his next target then. But Rocket Lee, the top 4, well, I should say that the top 3, sorry, 3 of the top 4 I should say are in very close proximity. Then they've got a nice gap then back to P5 of Mr. Reed then, but now they've got a massive gap of 4.6 seconds then to Jenna then, who has stormed off into the distance in the opening laps here, and flying along this Qatar Grand Prix in absolute style then, despite the conditions as well here. Absolutely brilliant stuff indeed. And wow. As I was saying then before we started the race, then we weren't planning on these on wet conditions. There was no determined weather conditions at all. Then this is completely at random then, and the drivers are being thrown into it as well as myself, to be fair. But so far, everyone is doing a fantastic job. It has to be said. Then they've done a brilliant job then, sort of adapting to these wet conditions. Like I said, maybe a few drivers have done a bit of practice in time trial or something like that around here, but not in the wet conditions, of course. And yes, it is. Wow. Oh dear, we've had a bit of an issue then for an Alpine. I think it was Rosa then having an issue out of the final corner then. He's gone purple still in the final lap, the final corner I should say, as well, then going through into lap 5 of 29 and a 21.4 then for the McLaren, then storming off into the distance as well. Then Rocket Lee then dropping off slightly as well. Then Mr. Lee then trying to get himself into the fight then for that P4 position. Dynamo down as well then is in a bit of a gap then to the top 5 as it stands. Then Smithy Almighty chasing him down. Then Sam then is a bit further back there with Styles and winning now for company. Then Dan needs to get himself back into where he was roughly qualifying. He was P2 in qualifying, wasn't he? In the dry conditions, that is, but of course in these wet conditions it's not going his way. Then Styles and Winnie then are side by side, then Styles and Winnie, then Styles and Winnie, then going through into the hairpin. Round the outside goes the Aston Martin. Like I said, in these conditions it's difficult to battle, then especially it's difficult to battle in the dry, to be fair, and in these conditions it's going to be even more difficult as well. They're going through along the inside, then turns to the inside then for the next corner as well. Winnie's up at P9 and passes Styles then for that position as well, and good stuff indeed. Wow. How many points is Luke behind then? He is 19 points behind Dan then as it stands, with one more race to go then in Abu Dhabi next week then. So Luke is on 200 and... wait 1 second, I'll find it for you. Luke is on 217, I think it is. Yeah, so 217 for Luke, then 236 then for Dan. Yeah, so 19 points the difference then, of course. 26 points on offer then here in Qatar, and of course another 26 points available as well then in Abu Dhabi then in a week's time then. So Rocket Lee's in the pit lane. Rocket Lee is calling it down the wet compound tyres already then. That is going to be very interesting stuff indeed then. What's it going to be then when he's into the pits as well then? Is there going to be intermediate compound tyres going on these cars? We'll find out now. It is intermediates then for Rocket Lee, then for Winnie potentially as well, then for Ginger Age and for Liam D. Both Williams then coming into the pit lane on the same lap then, so that can be a problematic benefit for Liam. But potentially, if it's the right call to switch the tyres now to Inters, then he will be laughing his way to the bank then for Liam, as will the other 3 that we've just pitted in. Winnie then onto the intermediates then, same for Ginger Age as well then. Liam onto the intermediates now as well. Good call, could be a good call indeed. Where will they come out then? Rocket League, Jesus Christ, that back end stepping out then massively as well, keeping it under control just about then. Fantastic car control indeed, but unfortunately not a very good way to warm up your tyres, but not too good to keep them in terms of checking the tyre wear on that one. But there we are then. So yeah, 217 then for Luke, who is P2 in the championship, then 236 for Dan. 19 points separates them in Dan's favour then as it stands, but Luke is doing a great job tonight then of bringing that gap back into his favour as well then, potentially then. I don't think he'll be able to, he might be able to if he wins the race then, and Dan doesn't score, but I don't think he'll be able to claim back the lead of the championship then here tonight then, but it could be very close indeed then. Rocket Lee is struggling, I think, on those intermediate compound tyres. as is Winnie and Ginger Age and Liam D at the moment, then potentially they might be a bit too early. Then Ginner has carried on. Then Ginner's done the fastest lap of the Grand Prix, which is promising stuff indeed. Luke is in the pit lane. Then Luke is calling it a day then on the wet compound tire. Anybody else going to follow him in? Then not Dynamite Dan. Sorry, not Smithy, not San, not Styles. Then we have got a pit stop for Dan. Dan Dan's coming in now as well. Then Dan is calling it a day on the wet compound tires as well here. So there's a few drivers then switching now to the intermediate compound tyre. They're deciding that it's not the conditions now for the full wet. Then the 7 laps have been completed, and they're calling it a day on the wet compound tyre. Anyone else involved? No, it's just Luke and Dan then in the championship fight, that is. Then Ginner is P3, but he is too far back to be able to be a contender, unfortunately, this season. But there we go. Then Liam's got a penalty there, unfortunately. Then, like I said, penalties around here are very easy to come by. Then we've had less penalties, I think, in these wet conditions, because the drivers are just trying to keep the car on the track then. And so far, so good. Then they've done a fantastic job of it as well. Then brilliant racing indeed out here. And Luke then in P14 then has come out ahead of Rocket Lee by 2.8 seconds then as well. Then on the intermediate compound tyres, then 1 lap fresher, of course, then for Luke then. But of course Rocket Lee has warmed up his tyres now, so he might be a bit more pacier then on these conditions, I should say, as we go through into lap 7 then. Only about a quarter of the way through the Grand Prix so far then. They have been storming through it, to be fair, but unfortunately these wet conditions then slow the cars down a bit, don't they, compared to the dry conditions as well. But might we see some dry compounds then going on towards the end of the race as well. We might see all three tyres as well then going through into all 3 tyres as in wets, intermediates and dries in this race. We might we'll have to wait and see, then we'll have to find out then, of course, as we go through. But just clocked wet in Qatar then. Yes, exactly. It's it's unpredictable stuff indeed, isn't it? But Luke then is storming away then. Rocket Lee then unfortunately not keeping pace then with the Kickstarter, who is really flying out there then is Luke then. Brilliant stuff indeed. Then of course if he can try and keep this pace up, then of course he will gain and gap then quite a few drivers as well then before they come into the pit lane. Hungry Styles is also in the pits now. He's calling it a day on the wet compound tyre. Then Dynamo Dan has been passed by Smithy then heading into the first turn, but Smithy then is having a bit of an issue then on the inside. Dynamo Dan might fight back here then going through into turn 2. That Smithy has got the move done then up into P4. All right then. Pit stop action then for Styles, for Jake the Slayer, for Ducanco. Into turn 1 then Luke has not got himself past Real Ashton when he set the fastest lap of the race then on the intermediate compound tyre. Then that is showing that the intermediate compound tyre is the better tyre here, I believe. Real Ashton has been passed by Luke then for that P10 position. Then where is Dan? Dan is down in P14 then as well as it stands. Quite a gap then between himself and Winnie then as well. Then goodness me, then unfortunately Dan he is struggling in these wet conditions as well here. We've got issues then for no we haven't. We've got pit stop action, I should say. Serious Mushroom then and Jake the Slayer are bad things as we go through into turn 2 then. Serious Mushroom has been, oh no, he's gone deep then, and Slayer's gone through as well then, I think. There, goodness me, where are they? And going through turn 3, oh, it's close indeed then. Mushroom has got himself ahead there just about then. Good stuff indeed. Now into sector 2. Well, let's see what the leads are going to be doing. Now, here comes Ginner. Then he's got a sizable gap now as well. But of course, that Luke was in P2 then, wasn't he? And that was as pitted for the intermediate compound tyres. And he's got a bit of traffic to get through, has Luke, though. Now on the fresh intermediate compound tyres. Ginner is in the pit lane. Ginner is calling it a day then on the intermediate compound. What will Rosa Sky do as well? Then Rosa is coming into the pits as well. Now, Mr. Elite might follow them in, or will he stay out? Then Mr. Elite is coming into the pit lane too. Smithy next across the start-finish line, but he's coming into the pits first as well. Then Dynamo Dan then is going to carry on. Then Dynamo Dan has carried on, as has San. So the top 2 then have changed hands once again then. As we go through then into lap 9 then, Dynamo Dan leads the way there from San then as we go into turn 1. So there we go, Ginner coming out in P3, I think. Then Ginner is coming out in P3 then, and Luke is going to be into, well, he's not going to be in a net P2, I should say, at the moment, but he's not going to be in P2 right behind Ginner then. Unfortunately, he's going to be a few seconds behind still. Winnie sets the fastest lap of the race again then, so Winnie is storming through then on the intermediate conditions, and he is flying up into P9 then, passing Mr. Elite then on the exit there as well. I think Winnie's gained a few places from that, so that's good stuff. And Dan up into P11 now, but like I said, he's not going to be too happy with the situation as it is. Then Astron's been passed by Luke. Then Luke is 3.4 seconds behind Ginner. So Luke has done an undercut here, because it was over 5 seconds, I think, wasn't it, before the pit stops then. So Luke then has got an undercut there as well. Then fantastic stuff indeed. Then Astron and Real Ashton then struggling away on the wet compound tyres. Then goodness me, Real Ashton's off the circuit then as well. Here comes Rocket Lee. Then he's gone through, passing Red Bull there as well. Then into sector 2. What will the top 2 be doing as well as we go through into sector 3 then for these 2 as well? Then on lap 9 now, will they call it a day then and put the intermediate compound tyres on, as has the rest of the field? Then there's only 4 drivers left on the wet compound tyres that we started the race on. Then all 20 drivers started the race on wet compound tyres, and only 4 remain now on those wet compound tyres as we go through then into the final couple of corners then for Dynamo Down. Then will he call it a day finally on those intermediates, also on the wet compound I should say. Then Rosa's got himself past Real Ashton as well then, as I think the wet compound tyres are not competing then anymore in this Grand Prix, but Dynamo Down has carried on then. San has also carried on as well here, and Ginner then is going to be only 2 seconds behind the top 2 as well as you go through onto lap 10 now. Real Ashton is not Ginner's not in the pit lane, neither is Astrodrom then. He has stayed out as well than Real Ashton. Will he call it a day then? Yes, he is. He's coming in the pit lane. I think that's very wise indeed, because I don't think those wet compound tyres are the best at all now. Blimey. So there we go then. 3 remain then on the wet compound tyre then, but unfortunately they're not going to be not going to be very competitive, I should say, then in these conditions as well. Then as we go through into the next few laps as well, then of course potentially. What I'm thinking here, potentially the likes of Dan and San and Astrodron as well, then if it doesn't stop raining in this whole race and they get themselves to the halfway mark then and go on to intermediates then to the end of the Grand Prix, they might be in a better position doing a 1-stop then than those who are doing a potential 2-stop if it carries on raining, that is. And then the likes of Ginner then, the likes of everybody else on the intermediate compound tyres have to pit again for a new set of intermediate compound tyres, and then potentially extending the stint now on the wet compound is the better option as well here. We'll have to wait and see. Then we've seen that before in China, I believe it was, in Gold, where those on the wet compound tyres stayed out then, even though it was intermediate conditions, just to make sure they only had to do 1 stop then and stopped in the middle of the race then for the intermediate conditions as well then, or for the intermediate tyres I should say. So yes, we'll have to wait and see then. It might look good then pitting early then for the right tyre at the right time then, but if you can hold on for a few more laps then potentially, which is maybe what Dynamo Down then and San are trying to do here, but Dynamo Down is now in the pit lane, yeah, potentially they could try and keep those tyres then alive for the final half of the race as well then. I just clicked wet in Qatar then, says Finn as well, that yes, unfortunately unpredictable conditions indeed as well, as we got into the hits comes Astrodrom as well then for the McLaren there. Dynamo Down onto intermediate tyres now as well. Unfortunately, we'll have lost quite a few places because of that. So he goes out of the pit lane now. He will be behind this gaggle of cars, then behind Smithy and Jamie as well. Then coming out of the pit lane now. Then we've got Rosa Sky and Rocket Lee battling away. Then Rocket Lee has rocketed up to a net P3. Luke has passed San then for P2 as well. Then 2.3 seconds the gap then between Luke and Ginner. We've got a fantastic battle unfolding here as well then, because Luke has brought that gap down then to Ginner before it changed from the wet tyres, I think I should say, to the intermediates. It was looking in control for Ginner then, but Luke is now putting his hat into the ring, but to potentially challenge for that race lead in the next few laps or so if it all goes this way as well then. Good stuff indeed. Dan up into P8 now as well then, with Mr. Elite having a penalty as well. Could be P7 potentially as well here, so this could be good news indeed for Dan then potentially, to try and keep a gap then, or at least keep a sizable gap then to Luke then into the final round of the season. As it stands then, Luke is on a charge then to potentially bring that gap back down then. 18 points then on the board then for Luke then in the Kick Sauber tonight then. Dan then is on for I can't remember then what it is exactly in the point scoring system, so there we go, but I think he's on for a handful of points indeed as well here still, which would mean that the gap then is still in his favour then, but unfortunately would not be able to well, he wouldn't be able to extend the gap, then he definitely wouldn't be able to win the championship as it stands as well here, but there we are then. If he got himself within the range of 8 points then to Luke, potentially Luke could still finish ahead of Dan tonight then, and Dan still win the championship then, but he needs to be over 8 points, in terms of over 8 points as a gap then to Dan as well here. Mystery up into P6 then, passing Winnie then into turn 1 and looking to storm on. Then of course he's got that penalty to his name, so a few penalties rolling in here as well then, only on lap 12 then so far, but a fantastic affair then here in Qatar then, of course in Losail then, full wet conditions to start off the Grand Prix. San then still struggling on those wet compound tyres, but we'll have to wait and see when he's going to call it a day then, but hopefully sometime soon for his sake as well then, because unfortunately he's going to lose out quite a lot of places as well as we go through into lap 12, goodness me. And Jamie's got a penalty for his name as well then, goodness me. There's all sorts of penalties then rolling in as well. Sam then has dropped quite a lot of time then to Luke as well on these wet compound tyres. Definitely intermediate conditions now, and it might even be dry conditions in a few laps as well, then we'll have to wait and see. But Sam then under pressure from Rocket Lee as we go through into sector 3. My goodness me, what's going on here then? Winnie then trying to get himself, she's got himself a 3 second penalty as well. Here comes Rocket Lee trying to get himself round San. but he can't quite then, as Rocket Lee has to sit behind then for the time being, heading through sector 3. But I think through the main straight then he'll be easily able to get himself past then, even if not before then as well. Then we'll find out soon as we head into the penultimate corner. Then Rocket Lee, where's he gone then? Rocket Lee, oh my god, there he's lost out to Rosa. Then he's lost control of the car going through the penultimate corner, unfortunately then for Rocket Lee. And now Rocket Lee then is, sorry, Rosa's got himself under P3, then here comes Rocket Lee then trying to get himself past Sand now as well as we head down the main straight. Then Rocket Lee then trying to rocket past then, and he has rocketed past then up into P4 and could get himself down the inside into turn 1 to get that P3 back from Rosa as well, then back up into P3 I should say then for Rocket Lee. Then good stuff indeed. And of course Rosa then is sitting back in P4, or moving back to P4 I should say then. I don't think he's sitting comfortably as it stands at the moment. It's a bit wet in the cockpit then for Rosa and for everybody else on the grid as well then, to be fair. But fair play indeed then. 20 drivers then have done a fantastic job so far in this opening stage of the Grand Prix. Let's see what San and Mr. Elite are going to be up to then, as Mr. Elite then is not going to be too happy with San, I don't think there, as San's gone very deep then, and that could be a very, very nice switchback then from Mr. Elite then up into P5. Then Winnie's gone through as well then, goodness me. And wow, what a move then from both Mr. Elite and from Winnie, and very good stuff indeed as well. Then going through into P5 then for Mr. Elite as well here. Can he chase down Rosalind? Of course these two have got penalties to their name already then. Of course penalties might start to roll in towards the end of the Grand Prix as time goes on then. Of course track limits do become a bit of a factor then, especially as the track is starting to dry out, so new lines are appearing, and it's getting a bit a bit more dicey I suppose you could say then, especially if it switches back to dry conditions then towards the end of this Grand Prix as well. Then we'll find out then in the next few laps. Then Goddard's picked up a 3-second penalty. Unfortunately Goddard's then he's not having a good time on those intermediate conditions at the moment then. Maybe if it does go to dry compounds then we'll see a bit of a swing back in the favour then of some drivers over others as well then. Oh dear, as Rocket Lee's had a bit of done a good job of taking out the DRS sign. They don't need DRS, of course, in this race then, as it stands, because it is absolutely wet indeed. And San has finally called it a day on the wet compact tyres that we started on then. Of course, Real Ashton's got a 3-second motor then. We've got moves then for Smithy, and not for Jamie and Dan then passing Smithy. Dan is under pressure then. Sorry, Smithy's under pressure then, but now Dan fighting back into turn 2 then. Legend has said, am I seeing inters then? Well, you would have seen wets as you started the Grand Prix then, as we saw full wets for the start of the race then. Rosa's passed Rocket Lee then for P4 then, P3 I should say then. Rosa up into P3 into podium places, and Rocket Lee down to P4. Then Mr. Elite has joined this fight as well here, as has Winnie as well then. So Winnie then and Mr. Elite then into the fight then for the podium places potentially as well here. Dan then is now in a fight with Smithy and Jamie. Rocket Lee has been passed by Mr. Elite, has he? And he's passed by Winnie as well. Then goodness me, what's happened to Rocket Lee? Rocket Lee struggling out there then. He seems to be having an issue then in the Williams team. Back underway I think. But not sure if there's issues then for Rocket Lee then, who's really having a bit of a trouble then out there for Rocket Lee then. Goodness me, what's happened then for the Williams driver then? Hopefully he's alright and he can get himself back on the way then, but he has lost out. There's no damage then to the car, but maybe there's something technical going on in that Williams car as well then. Good stuff indeed then. There's lap 15 underway then. Dan then looking to try and chase down Smithy Almighty then, and Jamie as well then. Rocket Lee then is looking to try and get himself back underway then. Has he lost his front wing? No, it looks like it looked like that from the rain, but Rocket Lee having a bit of a problem then, unfortunately. I'm not quite sure what's happened there to Rocket Lee. He was competing then for P3 then, but he's now lost about 5 seconds then to the top of the order then of Rosa Sky then in P3. Smithy Almighty then in P8, then Dan in P9. Then Dan needs to get a move on then, of course, if he wants to keep the championship fight alive, or championship title fight alive, then potentially to win the championship tonight as well then for Dan as we head into turn 2 then on lap 15 then. And I think everybody will have to pit again then, potentially in this race, because I'm not sure those intermediate compound tyres, especially around here, then it will hold up until the end of the Grand Prix from here. Maybe Dynamo Dan then and Ginner will be able to go through, maybe Astrodron as well then. Jamie has passed Rocket Lee then, has he? Yes, he has then, into the hairpin then of Sector 2. And Smithy's looking to go through as well then, up into P7 then for Smithy then. Good stuff indeed. Not sure what's happened to Rocket Lee then. He's just struggling out there, unfortunately, which is a big shame indeed, because he was looking on fire then in this earlier stint then as well. Then maybe the conditions are changing then to the dries potentially, and this is where we're seeing a bit more of a change as well. Then Dan has oh dear, Rocket Lee's gone very deep then as well. Then Dan's gone through to P8 now as well then. Goodness me, Rocket Lee has got himself trying to get himself back on the circuit then. Unfortunately, Rocket Lee then, he has now beached himself on the curb, I think there. That is definitely damage this time for the Williams driver, unfortunately, there as well. and yellow flags fluttering then. Rocket League trying to get himself back on the circuit here as well here, but unfortunately just not going to plan then for the Williams driver then as we go through. There's quite a few drivers going through as well then. Rocket League's gone from P3 down to P18 unfortunately then in this race, and Sandon is going through into P18 as well now. Rocket League then just needs to get himself back into the pit lane to get that sorted and get himself fixed and underway again then. As into the pits comes Winnie then, so Winnie is calling it a day then on the Winnie is calling it a day then on the intermediates already then for Winnie. What's he going to go on to next? It's more intermediates then for Winnie then, so that is going to be very interesting stuff indeed then. Winnie only did about 10 laps I think on these intermediate compound tyres as we go through then into the penultimate corner now for Rocket League as well then, but Winnie's only done about 10 laps on the intermediate compound tyres, and he's now coming out back in for another set then as well then, so that's going to be very interesting stuff indeed then. Rocket League then needs to get himself into the pits as well now to get that front wing sorted as well here, and oh dear, he's had another issue trying to get himself into the pit lane. It's a virtual safety car now for Rocket League. And I think that has been caused by the Williams driver then crashing into the pit entry there as well. Then virtual safety car now. So how long will it be out then? Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be having to do too much work, to be fair. But oh dear, as Jenna then losing the control of the car going through there. Of course, this virtual safety car will slow the cars down. Then the tyre temperatures will come down as well then, as they have to adhere to the delta. And that might be problematic indeed then. We're going to see what happens next then as well as we go through then into the penultimate turn. Sorry, the final turn for Jenna then. Is he going to come into the pit lane at all, or are we going to just keep on going as well then as we go through? Then it is a pit stop action then for Jinner. Then he's coming into the pit lane now, and wow, what's going to happen here then? Luke is going to come in as well, and wow, this is going to be very interesting stuff indeed then, if they're going to be going on to another set of intermediate compound tyres. Unfortunately everyone unfortunately the race will be nullified as well there for the VSC then from Rocket League then, and he has he's put a bit of a pay then to his medium compounds then for Jinner. Then goodness me, drive-through penalty for Mr. Elite, then speeding under the VSC then as well then. Oh dear, Jinner then up into, well, down to P2 then, but of course medium compound tyres going on then. Mr. Elite, Luke's gone on to intermediates again then. And there we go then. So that VSC then has, is put paid to some people's races as well then. Mr. Elite's race, I think, unfortunately has been ruined then with a drive-through penalty there as well then. Unfortunately for Mr. Elite, then that is going to be very costly indeed then for the Haas driver as we head into lap 17 then, of course. Medium compound tyres for Jinner then. Jinner is struggling then. Jinner is going to be, well, I think he's cost himself massively here then. Smithy's all over the back of him there as well then. Goodness me, then he doesn't even know which way the McLaren's going to go here. And Jinner's trying to hold on then. Smithy's gone through, then Luke's gone through as well. Jinner then has gone onto the wrong tyre, I think, here, unfortunately then. So that VSC has been costly then for Mr. Elite with the drive-through penalty then. And for Jinner then, he's just gone for the early call then. Unfortunately, it's not going to work out then at this stage unless it dries up immediately. Then Jinner is struggling then so hard to keep the car on the track even. Hungry Stars has gone through then for P6. Then Jinner is unfortunately on the wrong tyre completely. DeCanco and Jake the Slayer then into in a battle as well. Then Jinner then struggling to hold on to the car in this situation as well. Dan is pit for fresh intermediate compound tyres under that VSC, I believe, as well. But my God, then Jinner then is just not in the good place now as well, unfortunately. And yeah, he just crashed it into the wall there as well. Then Jinner, that's a safety car. Brilliant stuff indeed then. So this VSC has put paid to everything then as well. Then Jinner then has lost the lead, and he's lost the car. They're completely in a wall. And now a VSC has turned into a safety car here then. Brilliant stuff indeed as well here. Fantastic. Well, we thought commentating on a wet race in Qatar and with COVID was going to be fun. It's not. But there we are. Dan's up into P17 then. Jinner is out of the race then. Same for Rocket League then. Luke is into the pits then. No, he's not, sorry. Of course, he stayed out then. We've got a safety car out for everybody then as well. Jamie stayed out then. Luke then leads the way then. Jamie's going to be caught by the safety car now. Luke then has got, of course, pitted a lap earlier than under the VSC. Pitted a lap earlier there under the VSC. So then Jinner unfortunately will be, I think we're having to look at that after the race. Then medium compound tyres down for Smithy Almighty and for Dynamite Dan and for Ginger Raid and for Serious Mushroom. Good stuff for the Jet Stairs, also on medium compound tyres as well. Right then, we'll crack on then, hopefully one day. Safety car's going to be out and all that, but at least we'll have to wait and see if anyone's going to come into the pits again then and put on a set of dry compound tyres. The majority going for the dry compound tyre now, as the safety car has ruined any strategy in this race, it looks like. But there we go then, as we go into the pits then for everyone on the intermediate compound tyres there. Luke we got down with the tyre chain then. Of course Dan is back in position then for potentially winning the driver's title here. Luke is being held in the pit lane for some reason. No, he's not. So Luke will be down to P12 then. He'll still score points from there. Dan's only in P8 then, so it's still in Luke's favour then. He's down to P13, so he's been past projects there. He's on soft compound tyres, so that's going to be very good indeed. I'm not quite sure the softs will be best tyre to get to the end of the race then. Mr. Lee and Jamie as well then are going to be a blockade then at the start of this restart because of them not pitting for all the dry compound tyre as well here, so that's going to be very interesting stuff. Safety cars in at the end of this lap. Good stuff. Right then, Jamie will lead us away then. Of course, Jamie and Mr. Lee are on intermediate compound tyres, which are definitely the wrong tyres to be on now because the safety car then is definitely dried out on circuit then, so the two ones at the top of the order then will be struggling and will probably cause another safety car because they are going to be trying to be overtaken by those who are on the dry compound tyres, and they'll be much better on this restart as well then. Good stuff. As here we go then to get ourselves restarted now then as we go around the final corner. And again, not doing that right then, unfortunately, as Mr. Lee has gone into the pit lane. So Mr. Lee has got the call right there, but Jamie has decided to carry on then as we go on to the start-finish straight then to start off lap 21 of 29 now as well then. Brilliant stuff indeed. Medium compound tyres, soft compound tyres there as well. Then Luke has got himself past Goddard and past Jake. We've got a ghost car then of Luke. And what's going on in the background there? Goodness me, all sorts of shenanigans going on then for the Haas pair as well. And Mr. Leak's come out of the pit lane. No, he's not. He's in the pit lane still. It was Styles then having an issue then, it looks like, in the background. Then Winnie and Goddard's then all sorts of action as we go off the field then as well. Then for Astrodron, then Liam D is being passed by Luke. Then yellow flag as Liam's got a 10-second penalty for corner cutting as well here. My goodness me then, yellow flags then for Mr. Elite as well coming out of the pit lane, looks like as well. Goodness me. Rosa has been passed by Mushroom now as well. Then Rosa trying to keep the car under control but can't quite then as well here. All sorts of action it looks like here in as we've got Jamie then, who's actually scampering off in the distance as well now. 2 seconds the gap then to Smithy Almighty. Then Ginger and Rosa have got penalties themselves each as well. Then Ginger up at P4. My goodness me, that could be problematic then for everyone's earlobes. There we go then. Goddard has been passed by Astrodron. Then they're still struggling on these medium compound tyres. Maybe it's not dried out completely just yet then on the circuit there. But it might switch back in their favour as well then in the next few laps or so. Then good stuff indeed. Smithy Almighty then 2.9 seconds. So Jamie might have made a good call here actually, if it is still wet conditions. But he seems to be in control. And there's Jamie there somehow. I'm not quite sure what's going on then, but. So far so good then, out in front, and then Smithy up into a P2 then, of course, penalty permitting then. If Jamie's got 3 seconds then he'll be out of that window and winning the race here tonight. But so far so good then for Jamie then, as it stands in, unless the DRS then becomes enabled then, and of course the conditions switch into his favour. Then Dan has been passed by Luke, his championship rival, when he has gone through as well on the soft compound tyres. Then not too much of a problem I don't think for Dan then, because of course those soft compound tyres we don't expect to be lasting too long around this circuit then at all. and then on the charge as well. They're really trying to get himself past Luke as well here into sector 2 momentarily. Lap 22 of 29. We're going to have 7.5 laps of racing to go here in Qatar then to finish off the penultimate round of the season as well then. And there we go then, heading into sector 2 now as well. Nicely done indeed. Like I said, in terms of the gap, then we're going to have to monitor this, because I think Smithy then is starting to reel, well, maybe we're starting to reel back in Jamie, but the intermediate tyre seems to be okay for Jamie at the moment as it stands, which is odd, let's just say the least there. But there we go then, as we go through into sector 2 sector 3 now, and heading on to lap 23 then of 29 momentarily as well here then. Lucas got himself past Rosa as well, then heading into sector 3, and now up into P6 then for Luke. Then Dan then is stuck down in P9 for the time being as well here then, but unfortunately then it is just not going his way then. Smithy Almighty has gained quite a lot of time then on Jamie this time then, so maybe the intermediate conditions then, the dry tyres are now the best tyre to be on then. No DRS, I don't think, just yet. No, it still seems to be still not enabled just yet, unfortunately, then, for some reason. Rosa then trying to fight back with Winnie then into turn 1, then Rosa's gone wide then, and Winnie holds on to the place, and still Luke coming to P6 now, chasing down Mushroom, Ginger Age and Dynamo Dan then for those podium places as well. Then Jamie's lost out to the lead. Jamie's off the circuit, that's why then he's had an issue. Then he's got a puncture then as Jamie heading into the first sector as well. He's got a long way to go then to get himself back to the pit lane as well here to Jamie as well. Goodness me, then that's going to be problematic indeed then, and Jamie then is going to be under pressure then from, well, everyone unfortunately then. That rear left tyre is gone then for the, well, that front right is in the air, but the rear left tyre is gone then for Jamie, unfortunately. Then that is, well, strategy call that just didn't work out, unfortunately, then for Jamie as well here. But the puncture then, it was worth trying. If it stayed a bit stayed rainy for a bit more time than that is for Jamie, then he would have been able to get himself potentially into a brilliant position as well here. But unfortunately then the safety car then put pay to that as well as we go through into sector 2 now. DRS has been enabled now as well then, so that's going to be good news indeed. Then unfortunately with Jamie, then he is struggling out there as well, and Ginger Age up in the podium places now, which is going to be very problematic indeed. And if he gets an interview, then we'll have to see that. Luke going to come the flip back, says Finn as well. I'm not quite sure what that means, but yes. So of course Luke has no penalties at the moment, then Smithy Almighty has no penalties as well. Then he's currently leading the race by 1.4 seconds. Dan sets the fastest lap of the race, then Sam now sets the fastest lap as well, then going past the checkered line. Then Dan up into P7, then passing his teammate, not passing his teammate, so passing Winnie then for P7. Rosa Sky and Mushroom is next targets, then Luke is up into P4, then he's on the back of Ginger Age and yellow flags. It's for Jamie still, then trying to get himself back in the pit lane. My goodness me, Jamie then unlucky, very unlucky indeed then, but fair play then, trying to get himself into the pits then without causing a safety car. Ginger Age then all over the back of Dynamo Dan then here for that P3 position, or P2 position I should say, and yeah, it's going to be very close indeed then as we go through the final few laps, and 5 laps to go then as we finish off lap 24. Well, 5.5 laps to go at the moment. 4.5 laps to go at the moment, I should say. The Ginger Age trying to get himself past Dynamo Dan here in sector 2, then not quite. Then Dynamo Dan still struggling then on those dry compound tyres, although DRS has been enabled now. Luke then all over the back then of Ginger Age and Dynamo Dan here as well. Jamie then has struggled once again. Then unfortunately he's just trying to get himself back into the pits here as well. Then, but unfortunately then it's just gone from bad to worse. Then, and I don't think he can even get the power down on those tyres as well. Then, but he has got himself heading into the pit lane at least. Then, so that's good news indeed, at least for Jamie. That unfortunately just didn't go the right way then on the strategy there. He has got himself into the box now as well. Then goodness me, he's going to be a lap down now after that escapade as well. Then, unfortunately then for Jamie, then a puncture then on the intermediate conditions as well. Then Smithy set the fast lap of the race. He is storming off in the distance as it stands, and Ginger Age trying to hold on to the podium places, but here comes Luke. Luke then trying to get himself alongside the racing bull driver then in towards turn 1. He's got the move done, then Dynamo Dan then up into P2. Luke up into P3, then both kick Sables could be on the top step to the podium here as it stands as well here. Fantastic stuff indeed. Dan up into P6 now. These dry conditions then were where Dan shone in qualifying, of course, then as did Ginner, but Ginner's out of the race now. But Dan still in the race, and he's on the front row of the grid then in the qualifying. All of that is, but Dan now is trying to get himself back up into the fight as well here. Could finish on the podium alongside Luke as well here, which will mean the gap comes down to 3 seconds then between them as well. Then, if that is Luke finishes in P2, then that is, which he will do with penalty situation, and Dan finishes then in P P3 then, which again he would do with the penalty situation as well then. So that is going to be fantastic stuff indeed to watch then. Driver of the day is out in the comment section. There's quite a few penalties out there as well for a few drivers here in Qatar tonight then. Luke then is your candidate, and Smithy your candidate, driver Dan is your candidate, and driver Ginger Rage is your candidate as well. And goodness me, there's 4 choices then for driver of the day. Luke, Smithy, Dan, and Ginger Rage then are your choices then for your nominees, I should say, then for driver of the day of the Qatar Grand Prix. Then we'll have a look at the position changes as well. Then there's a few penalties rolling in out there as well. My goodness me. But there we go, the Ginger Raging up into P15. Might lose a place to Dan then, unfortunately, with the penalty situation there, but he is so far then keeping on a hold then with Luke as well, then heading down the main straight then towards turn 1. Then Luke then looking for a move then for P2. Then he's up and passing Dynamo Dan then into P2. The top 2 have no penalties then for Smithy and for Luke. Then 2 seconds the gap between the top 2 as well. Then will there be some team orders then down at the Kick Sauber garage to let Luke win this race then for the World Drivers' Championship, then fight to carry on then into Abu Dhabi in a week's time then. Dan's up into P5 now, passing Mushroom then, so Dan's got 10 points on the board then as it stands, I believe then, and Luke is on 18 for the time being then, swinging the gap down to 11 points between them then in the Drivers' Championship then for the final race of the season. Then it could be problematic indeed, then it could go down to the wire then tonight and in a week's time as well. Then we'll find out now as we go through into lap 26 then of 29. And wow, brilliant stuff indeed then. It has been absolutely epic racing this one as well. There's wet conditions in here. Luke's brought the gap down to 1.5. Maybe Smithy is trying to back off and to bring him into contention with some DRS as well here. We'll find out now. Potentially there's some team orders down at Kick then to bring Luke into the fight so he can potentially challenge for the driver's title. Of course, they've won the constructor's title last week. Then Dan's picked up a 3-second penalty. Then that's going to be bad news for Dan as we head into the final 3 laps now of this Grand Prix. Then on to lap 27 of 29. And Luke then is being reeled in then by Smithy's being reeled in by Luke then as well. Luke sets the fast lap of the race. That's going to be an extra point. Dan sets the fast lap of the race. That's going to be an extra point for him as well then in the championship fight. Then here he comes trying to pass Ginger Rage and into turn 1. Then he's done it. I'm into P4 now. My goodness me. Jamie's got the fastest lap of the race, then he's taken that away from both Luke and Dan, of course, and that is going to be an extra point for Jamie, of course. Jamie then struggling then in those intermediate conditions and is pitted for the soft compound tyres and is now back underway. Dan is starting to shine now in these dry conditions. Of course, this is where he was shining in qualifying then when it was dry as well before the start of this horrible Grand Prix. And now storming off into the distance then as well then. Luke has got himself within DRS range then of Smithy then for the win of this Grand Prix. Then Smithy, I think, maybe adhering to the Kick team orders down there as well then as we head into lap 27, then soon to be the penultimate lap of the race, and 28 then as well. Then Dynamo Dan then's in contention as well. Then Dan needs to get himself within DRS to try and fight off the demons then as well as fighting off the rest of the field. Yeah, we go through then into lap 28 momentarily as well, then flying through into sector 3, then a bit of a gap back to Sand, then who's up into P8, then to Kanka up into P9 as well, then good stuff indeed, and Styles up into P10 as well, flying out there as well, brilliant stuff indeed. Real Ashton in the points paying positions then on his penultimate Grand Prix then as well, then looking good indeed. Then Dan's got himself within DRS then of Dynamo Dan, his former teammate as well here. Maybe there'll be some former teammate work as well then, or not so much. We'll find out soon. Then Ginger Rage has got some DRS then to play with then down the main straight towards the first turn. Then Dan then he's not got DRS then on Dynamo Dan then, unfortunately, as we go through into lap 28 then of 29 then. There is the Kick Sauber pair then, and there is Dynamo Dan. Smithy has not relinquished the lead of this Grand Prix though. Smithy is bunching the field back up actually. Dan's going to be brought back into contention here, and maybe there's no team orders down at Kick Sauber at all then. Maybe he's just trying to hold up Luke as well here to bring Dan back in contention, and maybe Dan that could win the title here. We'll find out soon. Then we've only got 1.5 laps to go in this Grand Prix. More pit stop action then for Winnie this time to go onto the soft compound tyres and go for that fastest lap as well in this one. Jamie then is carrying on as well, and Jamie's got a 3-second battle as well, unfortunately. My goodness me then, it's all action here in the final few laps in Qatar then as we go through then into lap 28 then of course into sector 3 then for the penultimate time as well. Then here in Qatar then Dan is trying to chase down Dynamo Dan, his former teammate. Then will there be some team orders there as well? Then we're not sure. Penalties then for quite a few drivers out there as well at this stage then as we go through into the final lap of the Grand Prix in a few corners time then as well. Then Smithy Almighty leads the way. Then can he hold on, or will he change the order then in the final lap then and let Luke win this race? Then we'll have to wait and the scene. It's going to be fantastic stuff indeed. Well, it could be. We don't know. But there we go. Then Luke then is 7/10 away. Then I think he's too far back then to make a move into turn 1. Then Smithy is harvesting energy though, and here comes Luke then for the lead of the Grand Prix into turn 1. Luke takes the lead then in the final lap, onto the final lap of the Grand Prix. Styles gets fastest lap. Luke then takes the lead away from Smithy then into the first corner, and Dan then is a P4. Then Luke is going to win this Grand Prix. Then Dan in P4, and goodness me, then it's going to swing the time championship fight then for the final race. Then it's going to be so close indeed between them. Then 25 points on the table for Luke, and Dan then I think is going to be scoring 12 points then as it stands, which means that, what's that then? The gap's 13 points then. That will bring the gap down to only 6 points between them then. No fastest laps included. 6 points between them then heading into the final race of the season. Goddard sets the fastest lap of the race, 26.0 for the Mercedes Reserve. Good stuff indeed. As we head into the final lap then, the final sector coming up then as well then for Luke then. Can he hold on to the lead of the Grand Prix for one more sector? Then can he win the Qatar Grand Prix here and take the championship fight on to Abu Dhabi in a week's time? Then Luke is in control here. Dan then just has to sit there and have to hope that anybody else gets a penalty ahead of him. Mr. Elite sets the fastest lap of the race, 25.1 for Mr. Elite. Then here comes Luke then to win the Qatar Grand Prix. He's going to be under pressure from his teammate then, but Smithy I think has done the kick Sauber team orders then and let Luke through. Then Luke crosses the line to win the Qatar Grand Prix and get himself back in the championship fight as well. Then 6 points the gap between Luke and Dan in Dan's favour heading into the final race of the season. Then Luke is the champion then of Qatar and wins here in Losail then with a fantastic Grand Prix indeed then from Luke. What a drive then from the Kick Sauber driver as well then. Fantastic stuff indeed. Well worked indeed I think then with Smith the Almighty then, but Luke then there he is then on the top step of the podium then here in Qatar then. Fantastic indeed for Kick Sauber as well. Then they've already won the Constructors last week then, but 1-2 here in Qatar as well then. Fantastic stuff indeed. Luke wins here in Losail then. Brilliant stuff then from Luke. Then Smithy Almighty then a fantastic drive as well then into P2. Brilliant work from Smithy Almighty as well. Then Dynamo Dan P3 rounds off the podium places. I think we had Jamie then set the fastest lap of the race there, but Dynamo Dan rounds off the podium places. Then once again a fantastic drive from Dynamo Dan here in Qatar for Red Bull. Then Dan then got himself back up to P4 then and negated the issues then as well then that he had in the first few stints there as well. Then my God, fantastic racing indeed. Then one on Dan as well. Then Ginger Rage P5, best result of the season for Ginger Rage. Then my goodness me. And there he is then, he's driving along then with his pink helmet on, then just casually enjoying himself then. But P5 for Ginger Age here in Qatar then. What a result then for the Racing Bull driver. Fantastic. Well done indeed there. Oh my. Ginger Age gets driver of the day in the comment section as well. And there is the podium celebrations then with Luke on the top step, Smith the Almighty in P2 then, and Dynamo Dan P3. The gap 6 points between Dan, who is the championship leader then, and Luke in P2. Glad the race went dry. God, some people's spatial awareness. Says there in the comment section. There we go. Good stuff indeed then as we go through then onto the classification shortly. And hopefully we'll have some interviews as well in the next few moments too. There it is. It's raining again in Qatar then as we go through the classification. Then both Kick Saubers then fantastic result. Then Dynamo Dan rounding off the podium here. Dan in P4 then keeps the lead in the championship. Then 6 points though is the gap now into the final race of the season. Ginger Age in the best result of the season, 19th to 5th. Then fantastic. Rosa Sky on a debut appearance. Then fantastic reserve appearance as well. Then from Rosa Sky. Then Serious Mushroom P7, Saturn P8. Then Dukanko P9, Styles in P11. Sorry P10. Then Jake the Slayer P11, Astrodron in P12, Liam in P13, Real Ashton P14. First points of the season to Real Ashton as well. Fair play to him. Then Winnie P15 with fastest lap. Then Goddard's P16, Mr. Elite P17, Gina and Rocket Lee then DNF then in various ways as well. We'll start off the interviews then as well. Then, my goodness me, what a race that was indeed, and I am tired. Then Smithy Almighty, then we'll start off with you because you're the only one here. How was that race for yourself then? Of course, it looked like you might be winning that race in the end there, but you finished P2 then. Was there some team orders down at Kick?
Yeah, I had to do it, didn't I? I had to let him pass. But there's part of me that was sitting there thinking, I've got to get my first win of the season. But at this time, when it's so tight for him, I had to let him have it. We won the Constructors together, so that's enough for me.
Brilliant stuff indeed. Sorry, I'm going to have to mute you, Luke, for a minute. Yeah, good stuff indeed. And of course, in these wet conditions around Qatar, then what were you thinking about that then in those at the start of this race? And were you had you done any practice for the wet conditions at all?
One word: pain.
Sounds good. Sounds about right. Good stuff indeed. And yeah, how was that? What in terms of the just keeping it on the island in the first stint or two? Then did you expect it to dry out then as we went through, or were you expecting full wet conditions for the whole race?
To begin with, I was expecting it to dry out, but for some reason, the race engineers seemed to. I don't know if that was the same for anyone else, but my race engineer and the people that are in the party seemed that the race engineers were quite far off what they were saying it was going to dry up. I think at the start of my race, it said it was going to be drying up in about 10 minutes, and obviously we all saw that weren't the case. So yeah, I got to a point where I thought it was going to go to the end until that final safety car, and then luckily enough, it's starting to lighten up a bit, and we was able to go onto the mediums. But even that was quite shaky for the first couple of laps, so I didn't even know if I was going to get through that. But thankfully, we did.
And like I said, Kick Sauber then ending the season out. They started it as well with the 1-2 once again. Then, and what's your thoughts then? Of course, you've got in the final race of the season, then you're battling for your own pride as well, of course. But there is nothing to fight for in the constructors, I don't think. What's your thoughts been for this season then with the Kick Sauber team?
Yeah, it's been a brilliant. Yeah, like I say, I think I've been quite lucky in having great teammates the last few seasons, and Luke's just contributed to that and added to that this season as well. So yeah, it's been great. There's been a couple of times where we've had a couple of wheel to wheel moments, which has been quite fun. And there's obviously, I think we've also known when to play at calms, and we've definitely had no comes together. And I think realistically, that's all you can ask from a teammate sometimes.
Brilliant stuff indeed, and congratulations then for P2 tonight. Then here in Qatar, then for Smithy. We'll start then with Luke then. Well, no, go on to Luke, sorry, I should say. Luke, a fantastic result for yourself then tonight. We've got quite a lot of background noise with you, but
sorry.
Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Good stuff indeed. So how was it for yourself then? A bit of team orders then, we heard from Smithy then at the very end there to let you through then for the win. And of course, in terms of the championship, then it's back on then at 6 points the gap between yourself and Dan in his favour into the final race of the season. Then what's your thoughts after that Grand Prix?
That was, I think, the most chaotic Grand Prix. It's Qatar, which obviously you don't expect to be wet, and when it said full wet in qualifying, my engineer was like, there's no way. Like, if you look at the track temps, there's no way. And then we loaded in, and it was full wet, and I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be interesting, because my setup wasn't that good. I had a lot of oversteer, a lot of sliding, but I had a really good start, and then, I mean, to be honest, two things from that. Jinner should have won that if he didn't make the wrong strategy call. He was rapid this evening, and of course I've got to thank my teammate. Like, honestly, as much as you can love a teammate in a league is how much I love Smithy right now. I saw him going down to none down the start finish route on that last lap, and I was just screaming down my headset, thank you, Smithy. He is a legend, and I thank him for that. If the championship wasn't as close as it would have been his win. He deserves it. I've stolen another win from him this season before. But yeah, that was a chaotic race, and you had the safety car, and then obviously it dried up during the safety car, but it wasn't that dry at the restart, so yeah, absolute chaos.
There you go, Smithy. Somebody loves you. A fantastic race.
Welcome, mate.
Fantastic race indeed from yourself as well, Luke. Of course, you had to be there to. You have to be in it to win, sort of thing, don't you? So
yeah.
Those wet conditions as well. Then you started off then with a quite a good start. It looked like as well, getting yourself up into the podium places. Then even in the first lap. What was your thoughts then going on those wet conditions? Then wet tyres to start off the race.
Yeah, it was chaos because as the Qatar is not a track you normally practice in the wet. It's not like a Belgium or Brazil where you think it's going to rain. So yeah, chaos. Very difficult conditions. As I said, Jinner was absolutely rapid. He just disappeared down the road. I don't think in any fair fight that would have been a win for me. It was chaotic, and then the inters were a lot better. I felt a lot more comfortable on the intermediates. I had a massive gap to third and fourth, but again, Jinner was scarping off down the road. So yeah, I will take what I can get, which is P1, which is not what I was expecting at any point tonight. But yeah, Qatar, I can tell you for free, is not a fun place to drive in the wet, and I have had it in the past where league races have had wet Abu Dhabis. So I'm not hoping for a wet Abu Dhabi, but I feel like I am going to be prepared for a wet Abu Dhabi should the need arise next week.
Stuff indeed. Then we'll have to wait and see how it's going to unfold then in the final race of the season. Then, but Luke, then you've done a great job then tonight, getting yourself back in contention as well. Then 6 points the gap then between yourself and Dan, then heading into the final race of the season. And congratulations. There we go then. Good stuff. We've got Dynamo Dan then rounding off the podium here tonight as well then in the Red Bull tonight as well then. Good stuff from Dynamo Dan once again. A very clean and consistent drive as we've been accustomed to this season as well then. How was your, what's your thoughts then after that one?
Yeah, I don't want to ever race in rain again after that. I think that's traumatized me for the rest of my racing career. Yeah, that was horrible. I think of all tracks, that's probably one of the worst to have a wet race on because it's so bendy and fast. So yeah, I don't want to do that again in a rush.
Yeah, I think you're right. To be fair, probably one of the worst choices. Then we shouldn't have set it to full wet for the start of the race. Then should we? Before the lobby started off. Just to double check, I'll double check it as well now. Actually, we can double check it in the lobby. Give me 2 seconds. I'm going to double check the weather situation in the lobby before I say anything. Weather and time of day is dynamic. I can promise you that. I'm looking at it on the stream, so I can. Yeah, bear me 1 second. I will show you on stream. This is the lobby settings that we're just using: dynamic weather, realistic start time, and all that sort of stuff. So just to make sure that everyone's aware. We didn't do it on purpose, but no. Congratulations again for Dynamo Dan then as well. Then you got yourself another podium under your belt. Then with Gina not finishing and going into the final race of the season, similar to Luke and Dan. Then the gap I think is only a few points then between yourself and Gina. Then heading into the final race. And do you reckon that P3 could be on the cards for yourself?
I mean, I can give it a go. It all depends on what the other drivers do, but they're obviously going to be pushing, so who knows. I just need to make the right strategy calls because I don't think I did today and I lost a lot of places and time. So who knows?
So do you reckon you could have got the win today if you got the calls right?
I think if I pitted a bit sooner onto the intermediates, I think I'd have been up there. But I was really struggling with the mediums. Even when the track dried, they just wouldn't heat up. I don't think my front right heated up till about lap 27. So I was really struggling on some turns.
Well, still a good result indeed then as well. P3 tonight then, fantastic stuff. And going into the final race then, is there anything you want to do for the final race? Then you're going to win the race, or what's the plan?
As always, I'll just try and get big points, but who knows what will happen on the night.
Fantastic stuff indeed. Congratulations as well then tonight for that P3 for Dynamo Dan then as well. That rounds off Qatar then for the penultimate round of ALR this season. We'll be back in action, of course, for Abu Dhabi then in a week's, well, not in a week's time, for a week's time for bronze, on Sunday then for gold then, and of course on Monday in silver as well then. And that will round off F124 then for ALR as well. So we'll be waiting for F125 after that. So stay tuned then. One more round to go then in ALR, then we'll see you very soon.